after what we saw yesterday and hearing about meetings late last night and early this morning with the players, what was your reaction to the NBA players deciding to continue the playoffs?
I wasn't surprised. I applaud them for the position that they took. Obviously, the Milwaukee Bucks had every intention of just forfeiting their game against the Orlando Magic. That's probably why they didn't get anybody involved and made a unilateral decision. But nevertheless, the other team stepped up. The other 5 teams stepped up that were scheduled to play yesterday. Obviously, additional teams that were scheduled to play tonight all stepped up. And it was important that they came together to bring attention to yet the latest tragedy that has taken place with an unarmed black man at the hands of a law enforcement official. Having said all of that, the NBA players came to the bubble to begin with because they recognized they had a collective bargaining agreement. They recognized there were billions of dollars at stake in the event that they didn't come. And even after they came and once they completed the 8 regular season games that satisfied their regional partners, there was still a television contract to honor here. If you look at the NBA Finals, for example, if there were no NBA Finals, you're talking about close to $1 billion that could be lost on top of at least $1 billion that has already been lost. A new collective bargaining agreement would have been reopened. As a result, forthcoming negotiations would be in vogue, and it would call for the players to lose additional funds as well. Not to say that's not going to happen anyway, but certainly it would have been more severe had they elected not to continue to play this postseason. They recognize that. They're not dummies. They are businessmen, not just athletes, and they recognize that they needed to do exactly what they elected to do, which was come back and finish these playoffs, which have been riveting, by the way.
Stephen A., what are you hearing about how unified the players are right now?
Well, I think that you hear a lot of division only from the standpoint of specifically what to do. You did have the Lakers and the Clippers that were looking to sit out, led by LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers, Kawhi Leonard and the Los Angeles Clippers. Those are the 2 prohibitive favorites. They're in the 2nd largest market in the United States of America. So had they elected not to play, it would have been incredibly problematic. I think it would have delegitimized a potential NBA champion if they had neglected to participate. But also, based on what you heard about the meeting last night, they went in there, a lot of voices were raised, a lot of guys were yelling, a lot of guys had different opinions and things of that nature. But in the end, the vast majority, and matter of fact, 28 of the 30 teams wanted to continue playing. The 2 teams in L.A. did not. They were outnumbered, even though one could easily surmise that LeBron James ain't outnumbered by anybody in the NBA. But clearly he's elected to play, so everybody's intending on moving forward.
What do you expect to see now moving forward from the players when they have the chance to talk to the media? And I go back to what Doc Rivers said 2 nights ago, the powerful statements, and what he said had such a big impact. It went viral. You don't have that outside the bubble. What do you expect from these players as well as coaches and the referees standing together and unified inside this bubble moving on?
Well, believe it or not, I think Doc Rivers has tremendously helped their cause, not just because of the powerful message that he delivered, but also, as you pointed out, how it has resonated. I had one league executive tell me last night, like 2 or 3 in the morning, if Doc Rivers was outside the bubble and had given the same speech, how much would that have resonated? We all know the answer to that question. It wouldn't have measured up to how it's rated thus far and how it's been viewed thus far. What's the reason? He's a basketball coach that's presently active right now inside that bubble, taking the stance that he took. So it really augments the NBA's position that being inside that bubble, being assisted by the NBA and supported by the NBA, having that platform to disseminate a message to the masses is far more profound than being outside of the bubble, not playing and operating as an individual entity. It's not going to resonate as powerfully as it did inside the bubble. So players see that. They recognize they're even more popular, at least some of them, that is, than Doc Rivers. So if Doc Rivers could resonate in such a profound fashion, what could they end up doing? I think you're going to see guys imagining those possibilities. I think you're going to see those possibilities explored. And you're going to see a lot of messages being disseminated to the masses from the bubble in the days and weeks to come. I don't think there's any question about that.
Aside from LeBron, no platform is bigger than the bubble right now at this moment. Stephen A. Smith, appreciate your words.
No doubt. Thank you.
All right, the NFL is still 2 weeks away from playing games, but practices were affected today as teams chose to cancel them. Many teams, in light of the social justice issues around the country, 9 teams to be exact, decided not to practice. The Jets, Packers, Colts, Titans, Broncos, Cardinals, Chargers, the Chicago Bears, and the Washington football team as well. bring in our insider, Dan Graziano, here. And the season, Dan, is scheduled to kick off exactly 2 weeks from today. How closely are NFL players monitoring what's going on in the NBA and also in Major League Baseball?
Oh, very closely, Sage. There's no question about it. And I think you see that with a lot of the discussion that's coming out of these training camps, the postponement and cancellation of some practices so that the teams can gather and discuss these issues, so that there's absolutely no doubt that players in the NFL are watching closely with respect and in appreciation of what the NBA players are doing. Think back to June when they put that video out with Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson calling on the league to say Black Lives Matter, among other things. You know, this is a group of players, a generation of players that understands it has a certain degree of power and leverage that extends to the NFL, and there's absolutely no doubt that they are watching what's going on in these other sports.
Again, 9 teams deciding not to practice today, but the others did. The Giants included in that group that did. And after practice, let's listen to what running back Saquon Barkley said.
I can't really just go and speak on behalf of the whole league, but you know, I mean, for us, that's something that we're going to talk about within our groups, within our team, and you know, what's talked about in players in meetings, and players meetings stays in player meetings.
So Barkley, strong comments about possibly sitting out games. Dan, what do you think? How likely is it that games will indeed be canceled if players decide to boycott?
Well, I think, Sage, the lesson that we take from this week is that anything is on the table. And if these issues persist and if they continue to bubble to the surface the way they did yet again this past Sunday, there's no question that NFL players would consider the same kind of action that they've seen from NBA players, from Major League Baseball players over the last couple of days. Again, this is a group of players that is definitely aware that it has the ability to act in a way that demands, you know, attention and change on these big issues. So you heard some of the best quotes today were from Eagles safety Rodney McLeod, who said, this comes down to the team owners and do they want to show support for our causes. He's basically calling out the owners of these teams to see, do you have our backs? And if the answers to those questions are yes, and the owners in the league can show strong support in a way that the players feel and appreciate, then I think it lessens the possibility of players doing what the NBA and MLB did the last couple of days. But there's no question it's on the table. These are young men that are absolutely fed up with what they are seeing, and they're looking for any way they can to make it go differently than it keeps going.
For more on the possibility of NFL players actually boycotting those games, Dan, I know you have a great article now on ESPN.com. Go ahead, I would suggest you check it out. A reminder, the season is supposed to kick off 2 weeks from tonight with the Texans visiting the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. Dan, thank you.
It's been 3 months since the death of George Floyd, a time frame that included protests, demonstrations, and open discussions from athletes all over the world, expressing their frustration about social injustice and that Black lives do matter. As the pandemic continued, sports came back, but the pain never went away. And that feeling quickly rose to the surface in the initial hours and days after Jacob Blake was shot multiple times. Enough is enough. Emotions turned into action yesterday for a generation that is tired of living their life in fear that it's going to happen again and again and again. Here's Ryan Smith.
It's just, quite frankly, it's just up in our community. I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but we are scared as Black people in America. Black men, Black women, Black kids, we are terrified.
The fear, the anger, the frustration, palpable for many throughout sports and the nation after 29-year-old Jacob Blake was shot 7 times by police officer Rustin Shesky in Kenosha, Wisconsin, Sunday evening.
It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better.
In the 48 hours after the shooting, there was a growing sense of exasperation that in this moment, perhaps basketball should take a back seat.
First of all, we shouldn't even came to this damn place, to be honest. I think coming here just took all the focal points off of what the issues are, but we're here, so it is what it is. You know, we can't do anything from right here.
But they could and did, setting the stage for a day like no other in sports history.
Still no decision if Game 1 of the playoff series between the Raptors and Celtics will be played tomorrow. The two teams met last night to discuss not playing.
Boycotting the game has come up for them and as a way to, again, try to demand a little more action.
Just after 3 p.m., prior to the start of Milwaukee's playoff game against the Orlando Magic, the Bucks do not take the floor for warm-ups, prompting league officials to go to their locker room. As the minutes tick by and the Magic are taking pregame shots, still no Bucks players on the court. The Magic exit the floor less than 4 minutes before tip-off. The Bucks never take the floor, effectively boycotting the game.
Over the last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball.
We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demand the officers be held accountable. For this to occur, it is imperative for the Wisconsin State Legislature to reconvene after months of inaction and take up meaningful measures to address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform.
Less than an hour after the Bucks Magic postponement, the Rockets 7:23 p.m. The San Francisco Giants and the Los Angeles Dodgers follow, postponing their game. And while other baseball teams play, the Rockies' Matt Kemp, the Cardinals' Dexter Fowler and Jack Flaherty, and the Cubs' Jason Hayward sit out.
I decided to let my teammates know that I couldn't go out there and play tonight. No, what's happening.
7:37 p.m. The WNBA postpones all 3 games on its slate.
We need to understand that these moments are so much more bigger than us. If we do this unified as a league, it looks different.
Moments later, the San Diego Padres and the Seattle Mariners postpone their game. Later that evening, NBA players from across the league convene in a hotel ballroom in the bubble to discuss next steps. 8:46 p.m. Two-time major tennis champion Naomi Osaka announces she won't play her semifinal match at the Western and Southern Open Thursday. And later, the tournament announces it's pausing play for that day. And before the night is through, 5 of 6 Major League Soccer games are postponed. By day's end, some 14 games postponed, with scores of players sitting out their respective sports, all in acknowledgement of the shooting of Jacob Blake, currently lying in a hospital bed, presently paralyzed from the waist down. These athletes speaking in unison to make sure this moment is not forgotten.